Here are your hosts, Kyle, Fellows, and Andrew Mertig. This is the Draft Fellows Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 6 of the Draft Fellows Podcast. Make sure to follow the channel on YouTube or check out the audio version on your favorite podcasting platform. Today is our second part of the AFC North Draft Review. If you want to check out the first 5 episodes of the series to hear about the AFC and NFC East and also the Ravens and Browns, follow the channel or the audio podcast and get caught up there. Kyle, how are you doing today?
Really doing good. I am super excited to continue this. We had a good chat post podcast when we talked about the other half of this division and we didn't get to talk about it. So we're really excited just to keep this thing rolling and get into some Bengals and get into some Steelers on this one today.
Yeah, let's just do it right off the bat. So we have the Cincinnati Bengals. They have a pretty big draft class here. They, of course, in the first round, kick things off with the offensive tackle from Georgia, Amarius Mims. In the second round, they get defensive lineman Chris Jenkins from Michigan. They have 2 third-round picks. They get wide receiver Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, and then McKinley Jackson, the defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. In the 4th round, they get Eric All Jr., the tight end from Iowa. In the 5th, cornerback Josh Newton from TCU. 2 6th-rounders, tight end Tanner McLaughlin out of Arizona, and edge Cedric Johnson out of Ole Miss. And then the 7th round, they wrap things up with Dejon Anthony, a safety, and Matt Lee, a center.
Yeah, man, this is a fascinating draft class. I think there's a theme here. I think that this is a team that said we're gonna swing for the fences. Like these are not. Sometimes you have teams that are like we're just gonna roll it down the middle and we hope we're like getting doubles. We're hoping we're getting on base. Like if you're using a baseball analogy, right? This feels like they were either gonna strike out or they were gonna hit a home run on some of these prospects. A lot of high ceilings, but probably some pretty low floors for some of these players as well.
Yeah, Amarius Mims, one of my favorite prospects in this class. I had him at 14th overall, so I think, it's perfectly fine to take him at 18, but the risk is obviously very high there because he has not played a lot of games in college, but what he is an athletic freak like you just do not see very often. And so I think for the Bengals, who already have 2 mammoth tackles, this is clearly their preference. Take the huge guys, but Amarius Mims is also an elite mover. And so I think the combination of those 2 things gives you a lot of hope that over time we're going to see him develop, maybe by year 3 into an elite offensive tackle. But the risk there is that, this is a player who may not make it through his rookie contract if things don't go as planned. So I love the aggressiveness. I think it's a really great fit, and protecting Joe Burrow obviously has to be priority number 1.
Yeah, durability, a big question mark. Obviously, 8 starts, but then also there were reasons he wasn't able to continue to play on the field. Pulled a hammy at the combine, so some of those durability concerns. You wish that didn't happen, so that it didn't bring that up in your mind again. That this is a player we just haven't seen play a whole heck of a lot of football, but the rare combination of functional strength and being an easy mover is super rare. So why exactly the Bengals wanted to take the swing that they did. But Chris Jenkins, the next pick that they make here, there's a legacy here. This is a legacy pick. He's got a lot of family that played in the NFL, a really good run defender, a really solid defensive lineman, maybe not super flashy. Where did you have Chris Jenkins, Andrew?
That's an excellent question, of which I was not prepared. But
have our producer pull that up. Well,
I had Chris Jenkins as 37 overall, and so again, projection. So you're talking about the risks that the Bengals are willing to take in this class. And Jenkins is a really solid run defender. So I think there's a much higher floor here than what we talked about with Amarius Mims. But with Jenkins, the projection is all in the pass rush. And that's where your money is made. If you're taking a defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds, you probably assume that you're going to get either the elitist of elite run defending, like what I believe Titans are hoping to get out of Tavondre Sweat, or you're hoping to get pass rush upside. And that's Jenkins can be a very, very good run defender, but they want to see him rush the passer in Cincy. So I think the upside is there. You can see the projection, but it is a projection. And so I think the risk is inherent there, that Chris Jenkins could end up being a just okay kind of player instead of what you're, drafting somebody at 49 overall.
Yeah. I think NFL teams like the safety of taking players that have that like family history of
Yeah.
making it in the league. Of course, dad is the former Panther, Chris Jenkins Sr. His dad, or his uncle rather, was Cullen Jenkins, who played with the Packers. So a lot of legacy there. We'll see if he can continue it. Obviously, winning legacy coming from Michigan and that program this past year. But Jermaine Burton, a really fascinating player in this class, all over boards, right? Like, and he goes here in the 3rd round. What do you think of Jermaine Burton? Where do you think that this is good value for Burton? Do you think that do you think he had a chance to go higher than this, or do you feel like this was about right for where he went in this draft?
Yeah, I had him at 82nd overall. And so
Wow, right on the dot.
nailed it. Right.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to do with him
Yeah.
because I think there's some really, really good stuff on tape. I think probably if the whispers about the off the field concerns, and we don't know how the interviews went, but reportedly maybe not that great.
Yeah.
Maybe if that stuff is cleared up, you're looking at a guy who's maybe like a high 2nd round kind of pick. I think, you see that skill set, you see a guy who can be a really dynamic threat at the wide receiver position. But, attitude problems don't necessarily like limit themselves to just the off the field stuff. And that's already concerning because, we see players every single year get into trouble off the field, and then they either get suspended or they get their contracts terminated, or, all sorts of bad things can happen there. But we see attitude problems also manifest problems in player development, in getting on the field, in developing chemistry with your teammates. So all of those things are a problem. Now, if I'm going to put a young receiver with an attitude problem into a locker room with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, guys that by all accounts really do things right, I'm much more willing to take the kind of risk that the Bengals are taking on Burton, but we'll see what happens. What did you think of him?
Yeah, same. Like I some people were like, if this guy didn't have some of those character questions, then maybe he's like wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 in this class. I didn't see that. I didn't get that excited. I think there's a lot of vertical element to his game that you get too excited. I didn't see like the dynamic package that some other people did. But he's a good player, right? Like he's big frame, almost a 200-pound, 6-foot receiver who can go up and get it, who wins vertically, like I said. So, I mean, I guess what gets me most excited is you mentioned like this is a wide range of outcomes player, right? Like this is a guy who could be a top 30 wide receiver in the NFL within a few years. This is a guy who could absolutely be out of the league in a few years as well. I mean, the not character stuff, but just effort things with blocking have been documented as well as concerns. But the talent is absolutely there. And we know that T. Higgins, there's a situation to work out there. He's either going to be there for a lot of money or he's probably going to be elsewhere soon. We know that Tyler Boyd is now gone. And so those targets are vacated. And so this is an opportunity for him to really step in and be a wide receiver 3 for this team almost instantly, and potentially step into a wide receiver 2 role with a elite-ish NFL quarterback within a year. So I think that the ceiling is absolutely there for Jermaine Burton to be a pretty impactful player in the NFL.
Yeah, I think the rest of this draft class is kind of okay. McKinley Jackson, a guy with a lot of upside, but I don't think necessarily a lot of productivity. That's something that is sort of common amongst Texas A&M prospects. But Eric All Jr. is a guy I wanted to absolutely love. I thought coming into the season as a transfer from Michigan to tight end U in Iowa, that Eric All was going to make a huge jump. It's just not quite there as an athlete, but I think he can be a really solid tight end. Josh Newton, I had rated a little bit higher than he went, but that's a corner that you're hoping to get some development out of as well. Cedric Johnson is an edge player that I really liked coming out of Ole Miss. I thought that was a really nice value, and the Bengals do tend to get a lot of good value out of that edge position.
Yeah, interesting. And Eric All is a guy who is fascinating to me because he, things didn't work out the way that they needed to at Michigan. There were some injury issues. He had a spine surgery in 2022, but then he also ended, I think, with an ACL at the midpoint of this past year. So this is a player that like a lot of people had high hopes for. And then obviously, he enters that Iowa situation and you think, oh, maybe he's the next best Iowa, tight end that comes out. And I think that that's probably in the Bengals' mind, right? When they take a player like this, like maybe we just haven't seen the best version of Eric Allen in the 4th round. Like again, the Bengals don't have a lot at tight ends. So this is a situation like maybe he fully recovers from that ACL and he becomes a better pro than he was college player.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Gesicki is necessarily the short-term answer, and certainly not the long-term answer. And so it will be interesting to see the development. I actually think McLaughlin could probably be a potential replacement long-term as well. I think he's a really solid player that kind of can do a little bit of everything. And so I think that would be an interesting player as well. You ready to move on?
Yeah, let's flip over to the Steelers.
The Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers kick things off in the first round with Troy Fautanu out of Washington, the offensive lineman. They come back and take center Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, in the second and the third round. They have 2 picks. They get wide receiver Roman Wilson out of Michigan and linebacker Peyton Wilson out of North Carolina State. In the 4th round, they take Mason McCormick, the guard out of South Dakota State. In the 6th round, 2 picks, Logan Lee, a defensive lineman from Iowa, and Ryan Watts, a corner from Texas. So you want to get things kicked off with the 2 offensive linemen here?
Yeah, this is a fun class for them because I think we've known for a while that there's 3 offensive linemen here. They knew they had to fix this offensive line, right? Mm-hmm. And with the change in the offense, change in quarterbacks, bringing in a new coordinator, like this was going to be what they had to get right if they're going to run the ball as much as they probably are going to want to run the ball. And so Fautanu, one of my favorite offensive tackles in this class, I thought he was probably one of the safest picks in the entire draft because he probably plays tackle. If he doesn't play tackle, like he's going to play guard and he's going to be really, really good there for a long time. He has some length concerns, but you remedy that by moving him inside if he can't hang. But I think he probably does hang at tackle. And so I think I would say he'd start for 10 years for you, but he's going to be 24 years old as a rookie. So maybe he starts for you for 8 years instead of 10, but he's going to be a solid starter in the league for a really, really long time. But I love what they threw at this offensive line. What'd you think of Zach Frazier out of West? Now you've got me saying Western Virginia, West Virginia there.
So Kyle, what would you say if I told you that I had Zach Frazier as my 51st overall prospect?
Did he go 51? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Hey, I'm nailing it.
We're going to have to end this podcast because Andrew's head's just going to expand.
It's already pretty big. This is making it worse. I liked him a lot. And, I think he was maybe a little bit more scheme specific than some of the other interior offensive linemen in this class, but he has Pittsburgh Steeler written all over him. I think Fautanu and Frazier really embody that Pittsburgh Steeler attitude, and Mason McCormick as well. This is really an identity draft for them. We talk about the Ravens all the time and sort of picking the players that we view as the best on the board. The Steelers often do that too, but I think there's also kind of an attitude that goes with it. And I think this is a really, really fun way of rebuilding this offense. Of course, you're going to have the changes at quarterback, but I think really getting back to we are going to have an elite offensive line. We're going to run the ball and we're going to throw play action off of that.
Yep.
And I think that is going to get them back to some more of that traditional Steelers way and really allow them some breathing room to let that dominant defense be dominant, and then have the offense that complements it really well.
Yeah, Zach Frazier was a finalist for the Campbell Trophy, which is the academic Heisman. So smart player, getting that into your offensive line as your center is, I think, really, really valuable. Mason McCormick, another, dropping in these offensive linemen. He is a player, one of my favorite interviews in the class. I just thought he's going to be a really fun player in that locker room, but someone who isn't super strong. But that's one of my favorite things in probably not all positions, but probably offensive linemen. If you come in a little light, like we can fix that. Like we can get you some Chipotle bowls, and we can put you in the weight room, and we can add 10 to 15 pounds. And like, it doesn't always work, but if that's the biggest thing that we need to do, then I think you feel pretty good about his projection. But he's a 3-time captain, super loyal to stay there at South Dakota State. And I just think he's going to be a really fun player for this fan base to, again, like they might have gotten 3 starters on the offensive line in this draft class. And if that's all you get from this draft class, that's a huge home run for this team. So gotta love it.
Yeah, I had McCormick rated as my 130th prospect, so him getting drafted at 119 is like so off.
I was gonna say if he went 130, I was gonna just get off the show right now.
Just shut it down right now.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so the Steelers move on from Deontay Johnson this offseason. We know that Chase Claypool did not work out. And so it is going to be interesting because George Pickens is the go-to guy in Pittsburgh, and they don't have much else besides George Pickens. Yeah. And so Roman Wilson comes in here, and you're a Michigan guy. There's so many Michigan players. I just say this every single episode, almost every single draft class. But like, what are your thoughts on Roman Wilson?
Roman Wilson, and I always qualify like I'm a fair weather Michigan fan. I have a lot of people around me who are much bigger Michigan fans than I am. So I think I'm relatively objective. I think he's a really talented player. And I think as much as we talk about McCarthy not throwing the ball a whole heck of a lot, I think that the flip side of that is Roman Wilson was a player that probably could have shown off a little bit more than he did. He's not going to probably be a number 1 receiver for a team, but he's going to be that guy who can probably be your intermediate target, who's pretty quick. He's a true 4.4 speed guy, but more than just being fast, he's pretty bursty. Like his acceleration is probably his best trait. And so I think he's going to be a lot of fun and a really nice compliment. I don't know that we know that George Pickens is going to be like, we don't know what George Pickens is going to be as like a primary target for that offense. There's going to be a lot of targets to go around for Roman Wilson. And I don't want to say anything crazy because this is crazy and it contradicts the like can't be a number 1 wide receiver idea. But there's a little bit of Amon-Ra St. Brown to this profile where like maybe he's a little bit more than like that slot receiver who's kind of like your third option. I think he could be a little better than that. And I'm scared because I just passed on him in a rookie fantasy draft and I took Marshawn Lloyd instead. But I think he could be a really fantastic player for the Steelers.
Yeah, another one that I had way off, I had Roman Wilson as my 86th overall player. Of course, I'm getting picked at 84.
Oh my gosh, that's pretty good.
I'm trying not to laugh to myself while we're recording. This is really great for my brand.
This is great.
What do you think about like a comp to somebody like Emmanuel Sanders?
Yeah, I can see that. Like the same thing though, like where like he didn't have to just be the slot guy, right? Like he was a true kind of number 2-ish, but a very valuable second wide receiver option. So, and maybe he doesn't become that, but like I feel like that is in the range of outcomes for someone like Roman Wilson.
Yeah, and the Steelers seemingly just draft receivers in the second and third round, and they turn into gems. Now, maybe a little less hit rate lately with Claypool and Kelvin Austin. I don't remember exactly what round Austin was drafted in.
Yeah.
But you certainly love that developmental track for Roman Wilson, and we'll have Russell Wilson to Roman Wilson, and then we'll also have Peyton Wilson on defense. So really going for all the Wilsons. But, Peyton Wilson, I think he's probably a first-round pick if he, has all of the ligaments humans are supposed to have. But the injury obviously knocks him down. But when you're talking about a comp pick in the third round, I think this is exactly the kind of risk that you want to take on a Peyton Wilson.
No, yeah. People were talking about him in the second round, and that was like, all right, we're a little nervous because, like you said, you kind of like the players to like have all their appendages and all their ligaments when they get to the building, right? But this is a player that, by all accounts, is incredibly instinctive. He's a great playmaker, and so the ceiling is certainly there for him to pan out. The medicals were the question, and we don't have all that knowledge of how he checked out at the combine and those kinds of things, but could absolutely end up being a starter for them for a really long time and might have been the best linebacker in this class.
Yeah, and I feel like, for most of my life, the Steelers have always had elite linebackers, and it's been a while. Really
Hmm.
kind of since that unfortunate, tragic
Yeah.
incident with Ryan Shazier.
Hmm.
And now they bring in Patrick Queen. If
Hmm.
Peyton Wilson can be the player that we think he is capable of being for a couple of years, and then you see how things work out. Miles Jack wasn't supposed to have a long NFL tenure, and he
Yep.
ended up playing many years.
Yep.
And so you never know. You don't expect it to be a really long time, but how effective can he be? Can they sort of mitigate some of the risk by limiting some of the snaps and put him in important situations? He's certainly athletic enough, even without the ligaments. And, I think he can make a really big impact there. So, anything else to close out this Steelers draft class?
No, I just think that this has. I mean, the Steelers are a well-coached team. They're an incredible organization. I think they've kind of floundered for a few years, and I think a lot of that has been they haven't had the offensive line to get it done. And I think that if you're a Steelers fan, I think that this class gives you hope that maybe you can get that fixed. And obviously, quarterback's going to be a thing that they got to figure out. But I think the offensive line is going to be in place for them to do that.
Absolutely. This might be my favorite draft class in the
Hmm.
whole league.
Yeah.
Certainly of the ones that we've covered so far. I really like what they're doing. Of course, it's not going to be flashy. Not going to win a ton of dynasty leagues going so heavy on offensive line. But I think for what they need and to be competitive, not only in their division, but in the AFC, this is exactly the route that they needed to go.
Yeah, really fun draft class and accomplished exactly what they set out to accomplish. So that's the Steelers. That's the Bengals. Thanks for joining us on the show today. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Draft Fellows. We'll be covering each division throughout football over the next couple weeks, so stick with us. But from the draft room to the gridiron, the Draft Fellows have you covered. So until next time, stay tuned and stay in the game.